I'm going to say it's January 19th or 20th, excuse me, 2019. Mom and Dad are going to talk about why they went to Loma Linda University.
We were stationed in Nome, Alaska, and I wanted to become an orthodontist rather than just a general dentist. And so I had applied for some different schools, and I included about 10 or 12 orthodontic programs and I then spent a lot of time ranking them as to which ones I would accept first and stuff. And we did not get accepted in my top three choices. And my number 4 choice was Loma Linda University in Loma Linda, California, which is kind of a suburb of Riverside or San Bernardino, Redlands. It's right in the middle of that triangle. And so we were very, very pleased with that acceptance. When I wrote them where we were, of course, that's one of the reasons I was excited, is because they had a program down there on their master's thesis. They required a master's thesis, and they were doing American natives, the tribes, and they had about 6 American natives, 5, and I became number 6. And so I brought with me the other tribes. The other 5 tribes was Apache, Navajo, Pima, Papago, and Mayo Indians. And they had already been working with these groups for the past 2-3 years, where they would go into these Indian reservations, and they would take x-rays, specially made 5 feet away, called cephalometric x-rays, and jaw sizes, jaw angles of bones compared to other points in the skull. And then they also took impressions at the top of the maxilla and one of the mandible, and they were doing configurations of molars on these studies. And from that you could determine who's related to who and how close. And it was interesting when they contacted me after I was accepted, and I was able to see 300 of my Eskimos, and out of those I was able to choose those who were 100% Eskimo. And I took photos, I took the x-rays, and I took impressions and models of my patients that I brought in. And then they take the measurements. Dr. Bjork out of
Chicago, is it?
no, he's from not Finland, but
Norway?
Norway, yeah. Anyway, it was his figures, his angles and things on, and I was able to show that the Apaches and the Navajos were related. And it came out when I studied their history. There are a lot of books on this stuff. They are quite close related, like within the last 40, 50 years that they were one tribe. And then they had a parting of the ways, and the Navajos moved into farming, and Apaches still wanted to do hunt and fish. Then I also found out that the Pima and the Papago were quite closely related, and I got that from the previous relationships that they had determined. And then the Mayos were a little bit more off to themselves because they were further down into Mexico. I came in with the Eskimos, which they were very interesting. It's the numbers, the cephalometric numbers put into the computer back in that time was like hanging on a string and all the numbers are on this ball down here that represents all of the angles and the millimeter measurements on that tribe hanging from the ball that was representative of that particular tribe. And you have another one over here of the Navajos and another one of the Apaches. And theirs overlapped each other a lot. That's why they knew that they were related closely. When I did my Eskimos, they were out here. All the rest were over here, and some overlap and some overlapped a lot, whereas the Eskimos were way over here and there was absolutely no overlap. They were, and so I am sure that they are more related to the Russian,
Greenland.
yeah, not Greenland, but the
Iceland.
what's the native group of China?
Mongolians?
The Mongolians. Yeah, the Mongols, because that's their history too. When you do interviews and stuff, you find out that many of them, of these patients, had actually been across to their natives where they came from. They from across the Bering Straits, they came across because the ocean would freeze, and it doesn't take very much. Even in my walrus hunting days, I could get very close. We got so close to Russia, we could actually see people on the beach of Russia. And so anyway, I published it, the thesis, and made some copies of the relationship of these American native tribes. And Loma Linda was very, very interested in getting the Eskimos included in this big study of where they fit in. My classmate, John Mattis, you can see that there's lots and lots of numbers, a lot of numbers.
Show one of the pictures, honey. Just show one of the pictures, doesn't matter. Just show the pictures.
But we took front view and side view pictures of them, and some of them looked very Oriental. Their facial features. So anyway, and I had to write up the thesis, and then I had to defend the thesis with the professors there at Loma Linda, and personally, I am convinced that the Eskimos are not related to the American native. That in fact, it was only 50 years before that I was there that it still was pretty much death if either of them wandered into the other's villages. They were that much different. The Alaskan Indian, which came up from Canada and came in, and then the Eskimos came in, and they bucked up against each other, and they did not mix. And so anyway, I wrote up the thesis so that I not only have this was a master's thesis for my master's degree which qualified me for an MS degree when I finished Loma Linda. That's what brought us out of Alaska to Redlands, California, where we lived. It was interesting when we lived there in Redlands. I was called as a stake missionary, and we were very, very successful on that. We baptized my companion, brother Virgil Luke, who was a jeweler there in San Bernardino, and very well known and liked. The two of us were called on a mission, and we baptized as many as I did while I was a full-time missionary in Virginia. It was 35, but we were bringing people to church. A lot of them and teaching them. And I don't know, the Lord really did bless us a lot, because we were getting good grades at the same time as much time as we spent doing missionary work. I graduated from that orthodontic program as the #1 student out of Loma Linda.
Wow.
So that opened up a lot of things for us. The Lord really did bless us.
Wonderful.